Continue working on your scene from the last movie, or use the provided scene named CP07 Pillars.max. As you have seen so far, Civil View has a pretty extensive library of objects you can use to enrich the scene. Now you learn how to expand that library with your own custom objects. The part of the bridge that spans over the water needs some kind of a pillar structure. The Civil View Object Placement Style Editor would help with that process. By default, however, you can only rely on a handful of primitive objects, and they are not particularly inspiring. You can potentially use these primitive objects, but you may want to actually create your own pillars and add them to the library. Open the file named bridgepillarstart.max you downloaded for this tutorial. You don't need to save the current scene. Take a look at the model. It started as an extruded shape and was later edited as a poly object to create the bevels and the positive-negative volumes. The pivot point is at the top center of the object. It serves as an anchor point when the object is placed later in Civil View. Typically, you'd want to give the object a name to help with scene management. Rectangle 004 is not a good name. Rename it Bridge Pillar 30 meters instead. The 30-meter suffix is a reminder of the pillar height. You'd also want to apply a material to it. Although you can define any material that suits you, you can also choose one from an extensive Autodesk material library. In the Slate Material Editor, right-click inside the view and choose Autodesk Material Library, Concrete, Smooth Precast Structural. Set the new material to show in the viewport and apply it to the object in the scene. It looks a bit off, as you still need to apply mapping coordinates. Apply a UVW map modifier and set it to box mode. Disable real-world map size and adjust the gizmo size until you like the effect. If you want, you can lighten the effect by adding a color corrector to the material definition. Simply drag a color corrector map between the material node and the bitmap. Now double-click the color correction node to edit the parameters. Keep it simple, just increase the brightness value. When you are done, close the material editor. It is also very important to collapse the stack, as Civil View does not deal with that very well. Verify one last time the pivot point is where you need it. Doing so, you also want to ensure the object is oriented properly. Because of how it was built, notice that the Y direction is pointing up. The object is not conforming to the world coordinate system. Therefore, it is a good idea to use Reset X-Form on the object to fix that problem. Reset X-Form is found in the Utility panel. When used, it adds an X-Form modifier to the stack, which means the stack has to be collapsed yet again. Verify the pivot point again, and see that the three axes are pointing and conforming to the world coordinate system. Test render the scene. In fact, this rendered image can potentially be used as a preview or a thumbnail of the pillar in Civil View. A similar image is already provided. Even though the preview image has some additional items, only the pillars are meant to be placed using Civil View. In fact, there's also a max file named bridgepillar30meters.max that is essentially a finished file of the pillar similar to the one you just created. Once a custom object is created to specs, you can add it to a resource kit. You can do that regardless of which 3ds Max scene is active at the time. Again, make sure Civil View is running, and then from the Civil View menu choose Civil View Resource Kit Manager. A dialog appears, and the first order of business is to choose a resource kit you want to edit, in this case, the private resource kit. Next, you choose a tab where you want your custom object to appear. Choose the second tab, which is for furniture. Here, you can choose a subcategory or create your own. To create a new entry, I find it easiest to copy an existing one and then edit the duplicate. For example, expand Posts and then right-click Wire Post and choose Copy. Name the copy Bridge Pillar 30 meters and click OK. A new entry is created under Post, and although it has a new name, it is currently just a duplicate of the wire post model. Make sure the new entry is selected and click the Source File button. Point to the 3ds Max file you created a moment ago, or simply select the Bridge Pillar 30 meter.max file you downloaded for this tutorial. For better resource management, Civil View will want to make a copy of the file to its own folder structure. Answer yes to the prompt. A confirmation appears, stating the new object is now ready for use. Click OK to dismiss the dialog. As stated earlier, you can also add a thumbnail or a preview image. Again, choose the one you created or the one that's been provided to you. Again, Civil View will make a copy of the image file to the appropriate Resource Kit folder, and you get a confirmation prompt. Finally, you can create your own subcategories or groups. Notice that currently the new object is part of the Posts group. Click the Group Name button and enter a new name such as Bridge Structure. You now have a new group with the pillar object as part of it. Click OK to exit the Resource Kit Manager dialog. You are now ready to use your custom object as part of the Civil View library. Go back to the CP07 Pillars Max scene and adjust your view to take a more global look at the bridge. You need to use the Object Placement tool to place pillars underneath the bridge. As you did earlier, you'll base the placement on the centerline alignment, even though you only need the pillars for the middle section. Go ahead and select the alignment. It should be the first entry in the Scene Explorer. Call up the Object Placement Style Editor as you have learned to do, and make sure it is based on the private resource kit. You are prompted about using the currently selected shape as a path. Again, answer yes to that. Add a new element and go to the Furniture tab. Note the presence of a new subcategory or group named Bridge Structure. Click on it to display the single entry. Set it to large icon so you can see the thumbnail. Set the mode to Multiple Regular Interval with an interval value between 80 and 100 meters, and apply the changes. This works, but still requires a few adjustments. One thing to notice is that the pillars seem a tad high. This is easily remedied with a slight negative vertical offset. A value of about minus 0.75 meters should work well. Also, the pillar placement is based on the full extent of the alignment, which means some pillars extend well into the land sections. This is easier to see in wireframe mode, F3. In that respect, you can specify start and end station values to restrict the placement of objects to an area you define. This is easier done from a top view, or at least adjust the perspective view to see the scene from above. Use the Start and End Station Pick buttons to select endpoints. Apply the changes to view the results. Close the dialog when done. In this case, it's a single entry that's easy enough to recreate, so you probably don't need to save a style. Adjust your view and test render the scene. It is starting to look quite good. In the next movie, you help it further by creating a more realistic animated water surface that flows under the bridge.